Okay, our next group is the data analytics group. And we have two folks up on the podium. So that actually helps me get back on time. So that works out good. Our first guest, he actually knows the Nielsen families. I mean, come on, how cool is that? He's the executive director for an organization that has indeed built a better mousetrap from Gum Gum Sports, Ryan Mosier.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've always had motorsports in my blood, born and raised in a small town upstate New York called Watkins Glen, which I know many of you know. So got my start in motorsports right out of college at the Glen, and then was fortunate enough to spend 10.5 years with ISC, bouncing around at a few of their facilities and spending some time in Daytona Beach. So certainly motorsports is a love of mine. Now I enjoy it more on the obviously analytics and data side. Gum Gum Sports. I'm sure the question will come up of where the name came from, but we're a computer vision technology organization that handles computer vision across the media space, along with in the sports and motorsports space, specifically looking at valuations across TV, social media, and streaming aspect of it. And I know everyone is being very cognizant about the consumption changes and how people are consuming motorsports nowadays. Everyone's obviously concerned about the ever-changing dynamic around TV and where all the viewers going. Well, fans aren't decreasing. It's more so just the fact that they're consuming it differently. So look forward to the opportunity to talk a little bit here. We'll keep it very, very high level, very top line. You won't get too much techie talk out of me because I know that can tend to be slow and boring. So we'll keep it flowing. Thanks, Dennis.
And it's no bull that IMS Productions is about more than just racing. In fact, they do provide services to the bull riding events. Pretty cool. But they also support basketball games and just about anyone else who needs mobile television support. It's Robbie Green.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. A quick story. I have a 19-year-old daughter that lives at home with me. She just got accepted to nursing school, and she was asking me this morning why the sport coat, right? And I said, well, just tell me if my socks match, because I'm going to be sitting in a place where people will comment on that. It's a true honor to be here. IMS Productions is no stranger to your racing family, as we are the sister company to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar. Actually, the speaker behind this chat is Jay Fry, who shares a building, or I share one with him, depending on who you're asking. A lot of participation, not only in motorsports, but into the subject matter with regards to television and media. So I'm anxious to get the talk going and see if we can help in some way.
All right, Ryan, first question is going to go direct to you, and that is the Gum Gum Sports has designed a greater system for analyzing data. Can you explain to folks how size and placement does matter?
I'll try to. Really the value that a brand or sponsor really obtains and realizes, whether it's across TV broadcast, streaming, social media, a lot of that is dependent upon the quality of that exposure, the quality of that image. Obviously we take into account, clarity of the image, the size, the share of voice. Are there other images or logos that are cluttering the space? So in our formula, in the way that we identify, extract, and then qualify each and every logo or brand that comes across those platforms, the value that receives is heavily dependent upon really the quality that you would see however you're obtaining those platforms. So is what it comes down to is really the quality of that in a lot of cases. Obviously, we'll take into account viewership and ratings and 30-second media equivalency spots as well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the quality and the visibility of that logo.
Which sport is doing it better right now?
The best that we've seen is the NBA. We've really been able to really hone in on the fact that a lot of the NBA stakeholders haven't really been tracking social media. They've been tracking it from a soft metric standpoint, so impressions, maybe engagements, but really being able to get a granular media value out of that. It's been all unaccounted for value previously, and just the nature of the NBA and the highlight reels and the nature of the sport. That's where we're seeing a lot of the value. A lot of the value is across the board, though, in any really sport or entertainment space. It comes down to the social media component that really hasn't been tracked before.
Robbie, how different is the job of telling the story between non-traditional sports like bull riding, stick and ball like basketball, and the racing world that IMS Productions grew up on?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of difference in how you tell the story, but it's ever evolving when you think about your delivery method, right? Because there are so many ways that has separated and given options to those that consume our media, whether it be, our traditional or linear broadcast in television, cable, or all of the people, including you in this room, that, some of you now are checking this or seeing that. I don't think it's so much different between the sports, at least from my perspective, but at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that we're paying better attention to how we're communicating and how we're granting and allowing access. Believe it or not, there are still some today that, have their arms closed and are only going to push out to media or to their fans in certain ways, and I think that's a mistake. And yet, it's something that we have to do to embrace, and if we've got 18-year-olds to other age demographics that we know are going to look at it this way and they have a shorter attention span, we've got to make sure that we're creating content to deliver those people so that they can access it when and how they want to.
I'm going to throw this out to the audience early, but as I do so, I'm going to play game show host and do my toss-up questions so you guys can decide who gets to answer first, but I'm sure both will be having a great answer on this one. Everything's changing nowadays. The way people are consuming the products are changing when it comes to race broadcasts, for instance. How do you measure success?
For IndyCar in specific, today we're still dependent largely on that linear broadcast, as I mentioned earlier, terrestrial television, whether it be cable or broadcast. We have to, because until the analytics and data and those that measure it catch up to the speed of how we're now delivering it and how you consume it and give us useful feedback and information that we can take to those sponsors and potential sponsors, that's really our only choice. At the same time, do you not pay attention to the rest of it? Another quick story. I'm a story guy from Louisiana. So Alonzo came over and ran the 500 this year, and we do rookie orientation practice for each new driver, as many of you know, before they're allowed to go out and compete for the 500 and to eventually qualify. And it won't surprise you that most years, as we have new drivers come out to compete, we don't necessarily broadcast or make available to the levels that we did this year for Alonzo, as we did. So we took a production-esque or a TV-esque production effort for that day, for his ROP, and streamed it. And we had talent set up and talk about what he was going through, tons of really good interface and action with his team and his managers and his mechanics. And what happened was we ended up trending. I didn't know really what that meant at the time, but we were trending on Facebook and YouTube. First time I've ever been a part of that, right? And it's what it means was that we had millions upon millions of viewers watching what was going on and staying tuned for longer periods of time. The disappointment for me was we couldn't figure out how to monetize that, right? And how do we then take that and go to our traditional sponsors or potential sponsors to convince them that while one metric may be coming down because people, I don't believe we have less viewers today. I think we have more. They're just being measured differently or not measured correctly. But the trick is to be able to tell that story. and to continue to show that we have people paying attention to the sport, that they care about what we're doing, and go that route, or as an example anyway. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think, cliche as it is, it's based on what your goals and objectives are. If you're a brand or a company that's involved in motorsports and you're gauging success on hosting 300 guests in a chalet and you meet that goal, then that's a success. Or if it's you're an activation partner in the midway in the display area and you garner 3,500 lead gen names to act upon and give to your sales folks, maybe that is looked upon as success. Or maybe it's looking at it as, we're looking for a 5-to-1 return ratio on our media platforms. So that's across TV broadcast and social media and potentially stream and whatnot. So I think it's really based on what your goals and objectives are. It's based on stakeholders, where you sit, where you're placed, and then to also, expand upon what Robbie said. Historically, a lot of properties, agencies, brands, and whatnot have measured media success on TV broadcast because that's what's been made available for the last 15, 20, 25 years, is getting those post-race or post-event reports and understanding what that value is. And now that the technology has come to the point where we are able to track across social and stream and really be able to provide, a media value that is useful and can be looked upon as unaccounted for value previously, but now we can throw it into our mix.
You said something a minute ago that I think is so worthy of repeating, and I was actually in a meeting yesterday talking with some salespeople, and it is to make sure that you understand first the expectation of those that is measuring that delivery and how they're doing it, right? But it's such a given that I think sometimes it's overlooked to ask that partner or potential partner or client what is their ROI expectation on their partnership or investment.
John Warniak with SEMA, and just a comment and a question that, to me, data is becoming the new oil of the auto industry, particularly as it transcends to automated driving, et cetera. And when you look at that transformation, are there any race organizations that are actually taking advantage of the data that they have? In some cases, automakers and suppliers are offering subscriptions. The $0 car, you get the car free if you agree to give them your data. Are there race organizations and tracks that are taking advantage of the information, the data they have?
Go for it.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I don't know that I have specific examples. I have to tell you that, data is as important to us as anyone else that you'll speak with, and to us, I'm largely talking about my sister company and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar, because it shortens the distance between A and B when we're trying to deliver what it is that they're looking for, right? But I think it's a fascinating thought, and certainly, that zero car has to pay out somehow, so the data is very valuable.
Yeah, and across, again, from a stakeholder standpoint, whether we're talking about a team, we're talking about sanctioning body, property, track ownership group, information is being utilized. I know that the majority of organizations globally are utilizing some form of information, some form of data, and really it's really used for it's a baseline, it's a benchmark, it's information that they can then utilize and or pass along internally or externally. So to answer your question, yeah, majority of them are utilizing various forms of data and information.
I have a question for Robbie. So as we know, IndyCar, if you want to watch the race live throughout the whole season, you have to have a network because it's on the network sports station. So there's many complaints, as always people do complain, but there are different outlets for people to be able to watch live. And I've discovered it on certain races that I wasn't able to attend, and I wanted to watch it live, and I do not pay for cable, so forth. So YouTube. So there are certain, there are individuals who go to the racetracks, and they actually do a live feed during the race. But somehow that live feed gets zapped. So is IndyCar, are they the ones that go in there and zap it out, or is there a certain like jammer within that facility to where it blocks it out?
It's actually Dave Dusick that does that.
And I was friends with Dave, but I will not be anymore.
So it's a great question, and we've learned a lot about that. So we process and push out a lot of video data, right, so that people can have access to that. But you left out one group that has a vested interest that wants to zap that data, and that's our broadcast partner, because they have today they have very little upside if you don't have to pay to go watch that sports network feed. So I think there's a varying level of people that would be responsible for it. IndyCar has an agreement like most sanctioning bodies or sports that has to agree with YouTube to say what they can do, when they can do it. And so there's some protocol that's written there, and that's why you may see some things last for a period of time and then have it taken down. And of course our goal, so IndyCar right now is in the midst of a new media agreement. So our media rights today, as they stand, expire at the end of 2018. So we are weekly, if not daily, working on what's next. What is that first race of 2019? Where is it broadcast, and what else is included? Can we claw back some rights that in today's world, giving it's a 10-year relationship with our current broadcaster, so that we can have the last 30 laps to push out a different way? Can we have specialty cameras or different things that we can do? It's a great question, and I think until we figure out that and how to get the analysis from those people that are consuming it different ways, that you're unfortunately going to experience.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
So have you ever thought the possibility of partnering, since the contract's coming up, partnering with Netflix?
Yeah, so Netflix, Amazon, there's a lot of them, and we absolutely do. What we're experiencing today is that let me set this stone first. I believe that it's safe to say that IndyCar thinks that for 2019, we'll go one more year out, that terrestrial television relationship with a cable or broadcast partner is still superior in keeping our business-to-business for our teams and the other sponsors involved to the degree that they are today. So as that is the benchmark, or our building base, if you will, we have to be respective to what they'll allow us to do. And there's very little wiggle room, if you will, in the broadcaster's mind today about what they'll allow on a second screen or over the top. But yes, we have met with all of those that you could think of and more to see how to solve that.
Before we take another audience question, I've got another toss-up for the panel. Can we overwhelm our target audience with too many marketing messages competing for that same space?
Sure. Yeah. Obviously that's involved in our formula and how we gauge and garner value for our clients. Multiple messages obviously clutters the space. It discounts share of voice, and it just makes the overall experience for the viewer that much less.
No different answer. If I'm your target audience, you can certainly overwhelm me.
Supposed to wait for the green light. There it is. There's been a lot of discussion about Monster Energy getting the NASCAR sponsorship for pennies on the dollar. And then we're just hearing this discussion that ESPN is getting the rights to Formula One for nothing. What does this say about what's happening now, and are some of these measurements, obviously they're not finding value for these two groups in some way. Where do we go with this, and how does this trickle down to short track racing, or does it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it highlights one of our biggest issues today as a sanctioning body that is still requires or depends on sponsorship dollars. Right? We all do. I can't speak too much to the Monster deal, other than the credit that I will give them is to an earlier point we made about until those analytics can catch up to represent how many and where they're watching. The way I think about it is, Sprint paid X for that sponsorship based on a report that Nielsen put out that said this is how many people, eyeballs, because that's still the currency today, is the eyeballs. We're watching your sport, and that report continues to go down, but I don't think the room would be surprised if I made the comment, as I have, that I don't necessarily think that less people are watching, or significantly less. They're doing it differently. So until the analytics ramp up to meet and capture how all of us are consuming our favorite products in sports, there's going to be some issue there. On the F1 deal, and I think I'm a little closer to that because I'm involved in some ongoing conversations, and so this is what I've heard. And that was merely a situation where F1 says, I want to control my digital and over-the-top media rights, and I would rather give it to someone for free than have someone else pay me for it and tell me I can't control that. And I think it was a long-term strategy. I think it was very bold. It's extremely bold. But I think that's why they made the decision that they did, because they believe the control, which they get to keep with ESPN, is more valuable than if they had stayed with NBC and left their digital and OTT rights for chance or dependent upon what NBC's mission would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of behind-the-scenes work, to your point, Robbie. On the ESPN front, I mean, you think about, the various platforms that ESPN has. And, the content is obviously being controlled by Formula One, but it's also, they're looking to grow that sport here in North America. So that gives them a number of outlets to utilize via ESPN. So that that's a win.
You see what I'm saying? They're getting a product and not paying for it.
It's only a one-year trial, though. It's only 1 year, so it's only for the U.S. market.
Yeah, and then based on Monster, again, I can't comment too much on that because I wasn't really involved in it, but I would say that again it goes back to how is it performing based on their objectives. Obviously they've been involved in motorsports for a long time. This was a huge step for them. Owning a series, a top flight stock car series here in North America. So, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that based on the term that everyone has heard of, it was kind of a trial type of scenario, and we'll see, based on their objectives and goals and how the data shakes out, we'll see whether they renew or not. So,
Lindsay James. We keep getting this information, have for a long time, the Nielsen ratings, which I think is what you're referring to, Robbie. We get Nielsen ratings for television, viewership of NASCAR and all the different forms of motorsports, and hear all this bad news about it's declining, knowing that it's diluted a lot more into the other areas. So the question is there not analytics for all of these other forms of digital media? Because, I mean, like even on a website, you can get Google Analytics, how many people look at your website and what page and how long they were there. So do we not have valuable information to measure those other forms that we can then give to potential sponsors? I mean, so we got a gap here or what? I don't know.
I know you're going to take point on this, but the way, at least I think about, absolutely, Lynn, you're exactly right. Anything that you do can be measured, but I'm not sure that someone has stepped in to either the believability or confidence level that Nielsen had in the way they delivered those metrics to today, that same person being able to capture and substantiate what those mean when it comes to an advertiser against it.
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to, you're talking OTT and or, streaming content and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, there are data. The platform owner of those, they know how many viewers, they know how long people were engaged within that specific program for, and they'll utilize that to sell advertisements, not necessarily provide to, data analytics providers like us necessarily. We tend to lean on a lot of from our clients to produce that information for us, just because it's so held so tightly by whoever owns those platforms. But yeah, to answer your question, it is available. And it's continuing to scale based on changes in consumption.
But it's not really validated or in a convincing way to be able to utilize it.
Not for us to date. I mean, it's very sporadic, and there's just not this one Nielsen, if you will, that provides it. But it'll catch up. It will.
There are other providers out there that are have the wheels in motion on developing that, and I wouldn't be surprised if something came out in the first couple quarters of 2018. So,
Robbie, your final thoughts.
You know, it's hang in there, right? Because that's what we have to do. And you know, to Lynn's last question, those analytics will not only get there. I'm convinced they're going to be better and allow us a more defined plan to know how to spend that ever important dollar in marketing and advertising, and to who we're reaching. Thanks for having us.
Ryan, your final thoughts, and please let us know the Gum Gum Sports name story.
We'll start with that. So Gum Gum, as an organization, we were developed about 10 years ago, and our primary core business has been involved in the ad tech space, developing disruptive ad placements within digital, so in-screen, in-image advertising, and we work with publishers, across the board on these placements. And the story that I've been told is our founder and CEO, he wanted something catchy, he wanted something different, and he wanted to kind of tie in what the business is. So Gum Gum came from the fact that our media side of the business provides sticky ads or ads that stick. So that's how Gum Gum came about, and we just added sports on the end of it for our sports division. So appreciate the opportunity. I met Tim a few months ago up in Chicago at a Sport Techie event. He mentioned this conference and the opportunity, and thoroughly have enjoyed it so far this morning. A lot of great content. And if there's obviously anything that we can help you with, obviously from an advisory standpoint, from a consultative standpoint, happy to help wherever I can. My contact information is in the book, so hopefully we'll be hearing from several of you in the coming days. Happy holidays, everyone.
Whether it comes to learning how to do video like champs, like the IMS Productions team, or you can also learn from the folks at Gum Gum Sports on how to do the product placement in your racetrack as well. Check out their website. You'll learn a lot. What did we learn from this group? Data is power, but you need to know how to measure the data better to understand how to use it. Number 2, there's always a reason to the madness of the rules we think are just there to annoy us. And number 3, cluttering the screen or your racetrack with too many competing messages will hurt all of your marketing partners. So one more round of applause for our data analytics crew.